President Joe Biden's proposed $6 trillion budget allows for the taxpayer funding of abortion, as he has excluded the long-standing pro-life Hyde Amendment. The Hyde Amendment is a 45-year-old policy that bars federal funding of most elective abortions and Medicaid. It is estimated that Hyde has saved 2.5 million children from abortion since 1976. Abortion giant Planned Parenthood has been applauding Biden's budget for what they say are important funding increases in the U.S. and abroad. The U.S. Bishop's pro-life chair, Archbishop Joseph Naumann, responded to Biden's budget saying, quote, "There are aspects to President Biden's budget proposal that will assist vulnerable people. However, Congress must reject the administration's proposal to subsidize the deaths of unborn children. Taxpayer-funded abortion represents a failure to serve women in their maternity by funding despair and death instead of hope and life." Joining us now on Skype is Representative Cammack of Florida. Congresswoman, welcome back to the show. You are one of the 20 of the new pro-life women elected to Congress this term. The last time we spoke, you said your #1 pro-life priority this term is to protect Hyde. What is your reaction then to President Biden's budget proposal that eliminated Hyde?
Well, it's great to be back, Catherine. Thank you so much for having me back on. And yes, our #1 priority right now is to protect the Hyde Amendment. And it's pretty shameful, especially from, a Catholic president, that, we aren't seeing any of the Hyde protections included in this over $6 trillion budget proposal. That's pretty shameful, and it should raise red flags in every pro-life community around the country. Ever since 1976, when it was enacted, this has been a critical protection for life and for the pro-life movement, where we don't use taxpayer dollars to fund organizations, be it through the nonprofit world or through the military, to fund abortions. So the fact that this is really the first time that we have not seen the Hyde Amendment included in a presidential budget speaks volumes of the priorities of this administration. And as I said, it's incumbent upon every single pro-life individual in the House, in the Senate, and really in government to speak up and speak out against this terrible, terrible budget that it will not only bankrupt us financially, but it's continuing to bankrupt our country morally. So I think we have a lot of work to do to make sure that we are getting our voices heard, being loud, and ensuring that taxpayer dollars are not going to fund abortions.
And Congresswoman, banning the taxpayer funding of abortion should garner bipartisan support, don't you think?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's something that has just really baffled me that, if that is a choice that a woman wants to make, I would pray that she will always choose life. But if that's a decision that she wants to make, it shouldn't be taxpayer dollars that are going to fund this. And when you look at what's happening, the dynamics of this gridlock that we have in Congress, you're seeing different dynamics that we haven't really seen before. You have folks that aren't willing to sign their name to a discharge petition to allow a vote on whether or not we will protect infants that have survived abortion attempts. That's shameful. And that's pure politics through and through. And I think it says a lot about the state of affairs of where we're at in our nation when we can't even come together as Americans, as human beings, to talk about the fact that if a child survives an abortion attempt, that their life should be spared, that they should have medical attention, and that it should be reported. The fact that that's turned into a political issue where Democrats refuse to come to the table says a lot. And so, again, I say that this budget that the president has put forward, not only is it bankrupting us economically and financially, but this is another step towards bankrupting our country morally. So again, for all of our watchers and listeners out there, please call your member of Congress and demand that Hyde protections be included in all of the appropriations and funding bills that we have coming forward.
It's really important to engage our viewers and encourage them to reach out to their members. But Congresswoman, given that gridlock, do you feel hopeful at all that pro-life members in Congress can push back against the pro-abortion majority and somehow find a way to include, ultimately, Hyde in the final budget?
Yeah, absolutely. When we did the discharge petition a couple months ago, and we broke the record in the House of Representatives for the most signatures in one day, over 200 signatures on the Abortion Survivor Protection Act, that gave me hope that one, Republicans and conservatives can come together to really do what needs to be done to protect life. But the conversations that I had with my Democrat colleagues that ensued, the ones that stopped me in the hallway or off the House floor and said, I'm with you 100%, but I'm getting a lot of pressure from my leadership. If I sign on to this, they're going to strip me of my committees. If I do this, I'm not going to be able to get reelected. Now, those same members who said those things to me and to some of my Republican colleagues, they're now announcing retirement. They're looking at other offices to run for because I think they recognize that at some point you can't really stomach that type of position anymore when you're not willing to go to bat for infants who've survived abortion attempts and protect their life. Then what the heck are you doing as a representative of your constituents back home? So I think there's room. I think there is absolutely a movement afoot. This next generation that's coming up, this is the pro-life generation. And we're going to see tremendous progress made despite the blockades that are put in our way, despite the gridlock. We are making progress and we are fighting back. And we are that next generation that is going to move the needle on this issue.
Well, thank you for your pro-life leadership. Representative Cammack of Florida, thank you again.
Thank you so much.
We are joined now by Christensen, the Federal Policy Director for the Susan B. Anthony list. Welcome back, Autumn.
Thank you.
Hyde has never been excluded in a final budget. Can you then put this into perspective for us and tell us the significance that Biden has removed it from his proposal?
Sure. So for 4 decades, we've agreed as a American public and as the Congress that we shouldn't fund abortion. We fund things that we want more of, that we think are good. We need more roads, so we fund more roads. But do we want to fund abortion? No, we don't. But now what this administration is saying is, actually, let's tell a woman facing a pregnancy that may be difficult that we think the best option for them is an abortion and we'll pay for it. And it's just unconscionable.
It is. And the Hyde Amendment and other pro-life protections have long had bipartisan support. What has happened that President Biden, who throughout his career in the Senate supported Hyde, is now the president to remove it?
It's a great question. For many, many years, there were pro-life Democrats like Senator Biden at the time who supported the Hyde Amendment. But what happened was during this primary season in this last election cycle, it became very clear that if Biden wanted to be the nominee for the Democratic Party, that he had to make a deal with the abortion lobby and agree to back away from his support of the Hyde Amendment and to proactively support funding for brutal abortions through taxpayer dollars.
So disappointing. Another pro-life amendment that was also gutted in President Biden's budget proposal was the Dornan Amendment, which is known as the D.C. Hyde Amendment. What is this amendment exactly, and can you explain why it's important?
Sure. So, the Hyde Amendment applies to the Medicaid program. It applies to a few other programs. But since the Hyde Amendment was first enacted, there has been an entire patchwork of Hyde-like amendments, amendments similar to the Hyde Amendment that prevent taxpayer funding for abortion in all sorts of different federal programs and programs over which the Congress has authority. And the District of Columbia is a place where the Congress is responsible for the budget. And so this longstanding policy has been, we will not fund abortions in the nation's capital. And now, of course, the President Biden has decided that he is going to eliminate that very important policy for the District of Columbia and invite taxpayer-funded abortions into the nation's capital.
Wow. Congress has not yet approved this budget. Is it possible we can get the Hyde Amendment and other pro-life protections back into the budget?
So, it's so important, and we at SBA List are already working so hard to protect the Hyde Amendment and the amendments that are similar to the Hyde Amendment that deserve protection. We're working very hard. We know that there is a slim Democratic majority in the House. Chances are that the House bills on this topic will continue that approach that the president has put forward of eliminating the Hyde Amendment, but we will be focusing very closely on the Senate, where you have that 50-50 Senate, and working with senators there, ensuring that they are willing to filibuster any bill that would fund abortion.
Okay, keeping that in mind, who are the key players in Congress that we really should be keeping our eye on if we want to follow this story?
Absolutely. So the chairman of the Appropriations Committee in the House will be very key. Rosa DeLaura, a former chair of the Pro-Choice Caucus, so we know exactly where her agenda lies. We will be looking to see whether she goes even further than Biden in trying to eliminate pro-life policies, so that she will be a key player. And then in the Senate, Leader McConnell, and also, of course, Senator Manchin, who sits on that powerful Appropriations Committee and will have the opportunity to defend the Hyde Amendment and other pro-life policies in the Appropriations Committee in the Senate.
He's been a very powerful figure so far. And Autumn, just wrapping up this discussion, what does this timeline look like? How long do we expect this whole process and budget battle will take?
Sure, we sometimes call this appropriations season. So the budget kicks off the season, and as we go into June, we will see committee markups in the House, and then floor consideration in June and July. Then the Senate will kick off their process, and the deadline is the end of September. That's when they're supposed to be done. Now, typically, that process does get extended to the end of the year until December. So we will be working this issue until the very end.
Absolutely, and we're grateful for you and your insight guiding us along the way. Autumn Christensen with the Susan B. Anthony List, thanks for being here.
Thank you.